What's up? Matt from Urchfab here. I said I was going to do some giveaways coming up to the end of the Escort competition. I'm going to do a few giveaways to just subscribers as well of the channel, and also to some of my patrons on my Patreon page as well. So I have made a load of these little Urchfab, don't know what you want to call it, trophy. So it's basically my logo CNC machined into an aluminium disc. These were made by a company called Miniature Manufacturing, and these were made for me years ago, and they've been sat in a box. I'd completely forgotten about them, found them when I was clearing through a load of stuff, and originally they were going to be coasters, but I decided they were too sort of good for a coaster. Each one is engraved with a number. There's 20 in total. Rather than using them as a coaster, I wanted to make a little stand for them, so just something you could put on a shelf essentially. So with just the logo CNC'd into the front of it, obviously you can't really see the logo, so I have to mask them up and then paint them black. And then once that's dried, I sand all the excess black paint off, and it just leaves the logo a bit more highlighted. I experimented with a few different grades of sandpaper, but I started with 400 grit, went all the way to 1500 grit, wet and dry, and then from there polished them. The problem with mirror polishing them was that the polishing would actually pull some of the black out of the design. That, with the mirror finish, made it quite difficult to actually see the logo. What I've ended up finishing with is just a 1500 grit, and that gives a little bit of a sort of shiny satin finish, and that is the best for bringing out the logo itself. So then I just drew up a little standing CAD. You've got a 2mm folded back plate with a 3mm ring, which I then spot welded onto it, and then obviously they had to be painted in mushy pea green, because what other colour could I possibly paint them in? And everything I paint, the paint finish isn't perfect. It normally takes me about 3 goes to paint something before it comes out how I want it. So a few of these might have the odd paint run in them. If you get one with a paint run in it, at least you know it's 100% a genuine Urchfab product. So it's just a way to say thanks to everyone that's a part of the channel, or a few people. I'd like to be able to give one to everyone, but that would obviously need quite a few. When the draw's done for the Escort and the Jazik welder, I'm also going to do a draw for a load of these, so keep an eye out for that. The second part of this video is basically just showing all the work that I've done to the Mk2 Escort, all condensed into one video. I know there's people that aren't interested in the Escort and the raffle and that kind of thing, so just a warning now, this will be all about the Escort, and one last shameless plug for my raffles. In this video I'm going to be talking about my Mk2 Escort that I bought a few months ago, and all the work that's gone into fixing her up and finishing it off from the unfinished project that it was. So this Mk2 Escort I bought off eBay. I'd seen it advertised a few times, and I could see that it had some really good bits on it. It clearly had a lot of money spent on it. Wasn't very well listed. The guy selling it didn't really know much about it, but I decided to take a risk on it and buy it with the plan of sorting out any issues that were there and then raffling it off. After having a good look around it, I found a wheel alignment printout that was in the document of paperwork, and noticed that the rear axle alignment looked a little bit suspicious. So after a quick measure round with a tape measure, I could see that the axle was actually not sat in the car square. So I quickly figured out why that was. Just a case of the lowering blocks not being fitted correctly. It also has a Watts linkage axle location kit with rear anti-tramp bars, and that had not quite been fitted correctly either, so required some adjustment. So it was just a case of making a few bits up on the lathe to locate the axle properly to make sure nothing can move. I also did some modifications to the U-bolt shackle brackets to essentially stop any movement there, and just a lot of the little tricks that I've learned over the years of modifying Escorts. I've had many of them. I just did all the same stuff to this one. So once all that was sorted, the axle was sat in dead straight. I also lowered the rear of the car a little bit more and raised the front of the car. Next, moving on to the front wheel alignment. This is something I've wanted to do for a while. So this will just allow me to pull the front wheels forward in the wheel arch and adjust the wheel alignment from the bottom of the car. So those worked out really good. I will have a few sets of those up for sale next year. And with that done, all the wheel alignment side of things on the car was sorted. Next job on the list, something a bit more high tech. I wanted to replace the digital dash with an AIM MXP dash logger from AIM Sportline. The original dash wasn't configured correctly, and it was coming up with overboost problems, and probably could have been sorted out fairly easy, but I've been working with AIM for years and wanted to upgrade to one of their very high quality dashes. So some of the wiring was a bit of a mess, so it gave me the chance to tidy up some of the wiring. The ECU hadn't been fitted very well. It was rattling around in the footwell, so it gave me a chance to secure the ECU properly, tidy up some of the wiring, remove some stuff that didn't need to be in there anymore, and then make myself a little dash panel to get everything bolted up and fitted into the car. I did later change that to something else, which you'll see. Another issue that I'd come up against was the fact that the ECU had been locked by the previous company that tuned it. I was lucky enough to find someone that was able to crack the password code on the ECU and unlock it for me. Next up, I had a bit of a disaster with the gearbox. Started crunching going into third or fourth gear really badly. So after draining the oil and having a few bits and bobs fall out of the oil drain, the whole gearbox had to be stripped down to repair the synchronizer hub, which had failed. And I think I found why it had failed in the first place, so that's always what you want to see. Whilst I had that apart, I decided it'd be a good time to replace the clutch, because the car had a very overbuilt twin plate paddle clutch in it, and it was like an on-off switch, which made the car quite unpleasant to drive. So I replaced it with something a bit more usable, but still plenty strong enough for the amount of power that the car is producing. Next on the list, a few cosmetic jobs. So the carbon bumpers do have their place on certain Mk2 Escorts, but for me, not on this one. I had to relocate the oil cooler because I couldn't live with that hanging out the front of the car anymore, and to do that actually required quite a bit of moving things around. Everything was very tight under the bonnet, and there was lots of interference issues. There was also a leaking T-piece joint that had been used to allow the turbo coolant line to return to the bottom of the rad. I removed that and welded an outlet straight into the radiator, which gave me a load of additional clearance for all the hoses, and just made everything much easier to work on. And then once those bits were sorted, I then had space to remount the oil cooler, so that was just a case of making some brackets on the CNC plasma and then shortening up the hoses and So the next issue is that there's no easy way of filling the car with oil or doing an oil change. It's got a nicely made breather setup system on it, but to fill it is not ideal, and I think this has a dry sump cam cover on it, which wouldn't have an oil filler cap on it, so I just decided to make my own on the lathe. So knocked up a quick boss to be welded on to the cover and a little cap with an O-ring in it, and then welded it in, repainted the rocker cover, and that's going to make oil changes much easier for the future. So with all those little jobs sorted, you can now see that there is much better clearance around everything in the front of the car. Here I'm just swapping out my dash surround for a 3D printed Retro Motorworks dash surround, which is a really nice piece, and just put the dash in a little bit better position and just gives it a nice factory looking finish. So next up, off to Performance Vehicle Engineering to see Steve to get this thing torture tested and finally tuned. So the initial pull on the dyno was somewhat underwhelming, and we quickly figured out that there was an issue with the cam timing. So a little bit of time spent playing around, finding the sweet spot for the cam timing, and then it was off to the races. We gained about 40 horsepower just in cam timing alone, and then from that point went on to settle on a low boost setting of 220 horsepower and a high boost setting of 250 horsepower and I think 260 foot-pounds of torque, and the results speak for themselves. It's a absolute blast to drive, and then at the flick of a button, if you want to, you can really scare yourself in it, which is exactly what I wanted to achieve. I really appreciate everyone that buys a ticket. It's what helps me to keep the channel going and to do more stuff like this moving forward.